quite young starting school. I would have been 16 leaving school had I gone to a school with a 5-year cycle, which was the norm in the likes of, say, the North Man, Coláiste Creasry, where most of my friends in primary school would have gone. So I kind of fell into rugby by accident. I always, like, my first sporting dreams was to play football for Cork. Never envisaged playing rugby. But the minute you went into you're a former CBC lad yourself, the minute I went into school, you saw the history just streaming off the wall in terms of the old black and white photographs stretching back to 1888. You couldn't help but be captivated by that and want to be part of that. Then I think when you saw the fellas on the senior team got more half days than anybody else, there was even more incentive to get on the side. So I have to say I was bitten by the rugby bug from an early age, and I was lucky again. I was involved in Christians in an incredible era in the 70s when we had my brother Philip O'Reilly. I think we won 8 schools titles in 10 years. So it was a fantastic time to be involved, and as I mentioned earlier, a lot of the players that I was involved with in school went on to play for a long time both with UCC and with Cork Con. So great memories. I often wonder what might have happened if I didn't go to Christians. I'd like to think I might have been handy enough to play Gaelic football at a reasonable level, but you never know.
And of course you mentioned in your book, Donal Lenihan, My Life in Rugby, and it's aptly named in ways, but you mentioned how as a rugby player you would have gone to watch Cork and people would be shouting things like, I think you described them as gone beans, would be shouting, are you not at the wrong game?
Yeah,
and,
I just get that fancy. Yeah,
it's ironic because we're stood here and just behind us is Parky Ring, right next to Cork Con,
And we've always had a huge association with the GAA and Con down through the years. I mean, Blackrock Hurling Club, many times when they've had problems with their pitches, they come down, they train here. I remember Christy Heffernan, the great Kilkenny full forward. He came to Cork, but he used to spend his winters training with us down the back field there. I remember throwing him into the second row one night. Christy was a big boy, but just to show what it was really like. Yeah. And all he was doing was complaining about his ears coming out of the scrummaging.
Right, so he should have worn a helmet in it.
Exactly. Well, we helped to toughen him up. I'm not sure whether Cork appreciated that because he killed us in one All-Ireland final that I can remember. Yeah, but look, I was born and raised in the GAA. I loved nothing better during the summer when you were in your off season. Follow Cork hurlers, Cork footballers, days out in Thurles for the Munster hurling final. I mean, no sport anywhere in the world could match the intensity, the rivalry, and just the spirit and the sense of occasion that you get in a Munster hurling final. So I mean, that's still part and parcel of my DNA. I'm really looking forward to Páirc Uí Chaoimh being completed, and hopefully maybe even seeing a rugby international there in a World Cup, which would be phenomenal when you consider where we've come from. I mentioned Semple Stadium. You look at the reaction of the Tipperary County Board because they haven't got a rugby match. I mean, who would have sensed that you'd be in this position 20 years ago? So it's all for the good of sport, and it's incredible. I think the contribution the GAA are making to Ireland would have no possibility of hosting a Rugby World Cup without the backing of the GAA, without the fantastic stadia that they have all over the country. So I think, if there was one event that would unite the whole Ireland of Ireland and all the different sports within Ireland, it would be Ireland winning that Rugby World Cup bid. So we just have to wait and see what happens.
I think it was on Sean O'Rourke's show on RTE. You mentioned that when the Cork County Board voted against opening Croke Park to Irish rugby and football at the time, you were receiving phone calls from JBM, from Billy Morgan, saying, "Look, this isn't our view on rugby. This is just a decision."
Absolutely.
That must have been sort of surreal.
Yeah, it was. Look, we pride ourselves in Cork of being. We have an excellent standard in all sports, right across the board: soccer, hockey, GAA, hurling, rugby, basketball. We've had a rich sporting history, and everybody in Cork sport has always supported sports people in other sports and have been very proud of them. So, to have Cork as one of the few counties that voted against opening up Croke Park for both soccer and rugby when Lansdowne Road was being redeveloped was actually incredibly disappointing. And as you mentioned, I did. Jimmy Barry Murphy, who I know really well, rang me up with a huge sense of almost embarrassment. Billy Morgan was another. I remember meeting fellas like Tomás Mulcahy and Ger Cunningham, and the views of the county board at that time were not representative, certainly, of the players of the era. But again, look, I think that has all moved on. the success in terms of what happened when Croke Park was opened up, that incredible day when Ireland defeated England, the respect for God Save the Queen when it was played, and then a rendering of Aran Navian. I think that was never heard even in Croke Park. When you consider, the amount of fantastic All-Ireland finals you've had over the year, it was almost like a nation growing up together, and sport was the reason why that happened. So look, things have changed down here in Cork even since that vote was taken, and the fact that Páirc Uí Chaoimh is now on the agenda to host a World Cup game, should we get, I think is just reflective of that.
Absolutely, and that's kind of explaining why I'm covered in mud. We're just back in the new park, and it is looking impressive. And you mentioned as well how in Cork various sports people support athletes in other sports, and there is a sort of a community amongst just Cork athletes generally in Cork sport. We've been asking people that we've been speaking to for Cork Week, who's your Cork sporting icon? Did you have one growing up? Do you have one now? Is there any sort of standout figure?
Yeah, well, I suppose growing up, as I say, my dad used to bring me to National League football matches in particular, because he played football Cork and Kerry. I remember Billy Morgan was a young teacher who was actually working in Listowel. My father used to drive him home on a Friday night, bring him back down on a Monday, because he was working on Tarbert ESB station was being built at that time. So Billy was an iconic figure for me. Then of course he went on to captain Cork in the 73 All-Ireland, which cemented his place, if you like. The Cork 3 in a row team of the late 70s, so many fantastic players like Jimmy Barry, Shawnee Leary, who ironically, I remember his son Tomas coming in to me looking for advice when he was in Christians about what should he do next. Shawnee was a fantastic character, but so many of them, Timmy Crowley, Martin Doherty was in the same primary school as myself, so huge amount of sporting heroes for me growing up. I think in the modern day, the one fellow I really admire most, and who probably hasn't got the credit he deserved, is Rob Heffernan. You look at the consistent level of performances that he's had in an unbelievably grueling sport. It's not one of the most sexiest sports to be watching. Thrilled that he eventually got his bronze medal from the 2012 Olympics, and again to see the consistency of performance in the last Olympics in Rio. I think he's an unsung hero of Cork sport, and it was great to see him get that Olympic medal there, even though it was maybe 4 or 5 years delayed. Thrilled for him especially.
Yeah, sure, we'll take it. Donal, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks a million for joining us for Cork Week on Balls.ie, and we'll chat to you again soon, hopefully. That was really interesting.
Cheers. Thank you.
Cheers. Right, so.
Great. That was perfect.
One take.